Okay. All right, we're up and going. So, ninth grade. We're going to continue on with our remote learning plans today. So, yesterday you should have read lesson 1 in your book for chapter 12, talking about culture and crusades in the Middle Ages. And you should have done chapter 10, the final test for that. Both of those were open book, and your lesson quiz for the first part of chapter 12. Both of those are open book, so those should be completed and ready for you to turn in on Monday when all of your work is due. All right. Again, everything that I assign you is due on Monday. So you should have already completed your chapter 10 open book test and your chapter 12 lesson 1 quiz. With that, you should also have finished the COVID-19 worksheet, the plague worksheet, and your individual research. All of these things are going to be due on Monday, but remember, you got those research worksheets last week. So there's no backup. This is no piling up work. This is all stuff that you knew was due until this happened, and now everything's getting pushed back. So you actually have extra time to work on it. Okay. So going on, starting with today. So today we're going to go and you're going to look at lesson 2 in chapter 12. You're going to read lesson 2, and lesson 2 has to do with the Crusades, okay? I had originally planned on doing a big thing on the Crusades today, but I think I'm going to push that back and postpone it because I will kind of want everything to lump together when I do a big presentation, and it's going to make more sense if you read everything, answer it, and then that way you can follow along with me while I work through everything. So today, what you need to do is you're going to read lesson 2 in your book, and you're going to complete the lesson quiz that goes along with that. It looks like that right there. It says lesson quiz 12-2. All right. So read lesson 2. It's fairly short, and you're going to complete this right here, and it's all about the Crusades. So the Crusades are an important part of European history because it's basically a religious war that was called by the Pope several times, and the Crusaders weren't always the nicest people, and they destroyed a lot of things. And it was when two religions were fighting over a very, very important, or several very, very important religious sites and cities. So today you're going to read about the Crusades. Once you read about the Crusades and you finish lesson quiz chapter 12 lesson 2 quiz, then you're going to need to complete this. All right. So I gave you a document-based packet right there called the Get to Know the Crusaders. And so what you're going to do in this is it's actually a couple of different primary sources that you're going to go through, read them, and then you've got some questions at the end, okay? Right now, I'm going to read through this for you so you can follow along, and I'll kind of explain everything. I'll see the cat. Freya. Alright, anyway. So, that's our cat right there. So, we're going to do the Get to Know Crusaders. I'm going to read through it to help kind of explain anything if there's any questions. And then it's up to you to answer this, and this is also due whenever you turn your work in on Monday. This is for a grade. Okay. So, please make sure your name is on the top. Alright, so, Get to Know the Crusaders. In 1095, Byzantine Emperor Alexios I sent a letter to the Pope Urban II and asked for aid from the west against the Seljuk Turks, who had taken nearly all of Asia Minor from the Byzantine Empire. If you did your reading yesterday, you already know about Pope Urban II, and you will learn about him more today. Later that year, at the Council of Clermont, Pope Urban II addressed a great crowd and urged all to go to the aid of the Greeks and to recover Palestine from the rule of the Muslims. Thus began the Crusades. So again, this was called by the Pope. In popular culture, Crusaders are always depicted as well-trained and well-armed knights who honorably followed the code of chivalry. Is that who they really were? Remember, we talked about chivalry and what it was. Below are 6 primary sources about the Crusaders which focus on the question, who were the Crusaders, what kind of people were they? Read each passage below and consider the questions related to that passage. So I'm going to read the passage for you, and then read the questions, and if you want to, I would pause the video while you answer it, and then keep it going, okay? So, primary source number 1. And remember, when we talk about primary sources, this is from somebody that was there or witnessed it happen. Primary is first, all right? Primary source number 1. Excerpts for the speech of Pope Urban II at the Council of Clermont in 1095, as recorded by Fulcher of Chartres. This is the speech that began the Crusades. Most beloved brethren, urged by necessity, I, Urban, by the permission of God, Chief Bishop and Prelate over the whole world, have come into these parts as an ambassador with a divine admonition to you, the servants of God. For your brethren who live in the East are in urgent need of your help, and you must hasten to give them the aid which has often been promised them. For as the most of you have heard, the Turks and Arabs have attacked them and have conquered the territory. On this account, I, or rather the Lord, beseech you as Christ's heralds, to publish this everywhere and to persuade all people of whatever rank, foot soldiers and knights, poor and rich, to carry aid promptly to those Christians and to destroy that vile race from the lands of our friends. Let those who have been accustomed unjustly to wage private warfare against the faithful now go against the infidels and end with victory this war which should have begun long ago. Let those who for a long time have been robbers now become knights. Let those who have been fighting against their brothers and relatives now fight in a proper way against the barbarians. Let those who have been serving as mercenaries for small pay now obtain the eternal reward. So, your questions. The first one, who is Pope Urban asking his followers to fight? So who is he asking them to fight in this passage? Excuse me. Number 2, where does he want his call to arms to be published? So in that passage that I just read, where is he asking people to publish what he just wrote? And number 3, what kinds of people is he calling for? So it lists specific people that he is calling to come fight. You need to answer that. All right, I'm going on to primary source number 2. Excerpts from the writing of the Baldric of Dole. As an archbishop in the Roman Catholic Church, he was present at the Council of Clermont when Pope Urban II delivered his speech. He helped to recruit many Christians to take up the call of the Crusades. Of Holy Jerusalem, brethren, we dare not speak, for we are exceedingly afraid and ashamed to speak of it. This very city, in which, as you all know, Christ himself suffered for us, because our sins demanded it, has been reduced to the pollution of paganism. And I say it is it to our disgrace, withdrawn from the service of God. Such is the heap of reproach upon us, who have so much deserved it. But why do we pass over the temple of Solomon, nay, of the Lord, in which the barbarous nations place their idols contrary to law, human and divine? Let us confess the truth, whose heralds we ought to be. Truly, you are not holding to the way which leads to life. You, the oppressors of children, plunderers of widows, you guilty of homicide, of sacrilege, robbers of another's rights, you who await the pay of thieves for the shedding of Christian blood. As vultures smell fetid corpses, so do you sense battles from afar, and rush to them eagerly. Verily, this is the worst way, for it is utterly removed from God, if, forsooth, you wish to be mindful of your souls. Either lay down the girdle of such knighthood, or advance boldly as knights of Christ, and rush as quickly as you can to the defense of the Eastern Church. So, that source, all right, was written by somebody else that was there when Pope Urban II gave his speech calling for the crusade. So, your first question, how does Baldric of Dole feel about Jerusalem being controlled by the Muslims? It's pretty well stated in there. Okay, so how does he feel about Jerusalem being controlled by Muslims? And then your second question, what kind of men is he seeking to recruit? So again, it lays it out there. He's asking for certain people to come fight. All right, I'm going on to primary source number 3 now. Okay, excerpts from the writings of Eckhard of Aurich. He was a German historian who lived at the time of the First Crusade. The West Franks were easily induced to leave their fields, since France had, during several years, been terribly visited now by civil war, now by famine, and again by sickness. Among the other nations, the common people, as well as those of higher rank, related that, aside from the apostolic summons, they had, in some instances, been called to the land of promise by certain prophets who had appeared among them, or through heavenly signs and revelations. Other confessed that they had been induced to pledge themselves by some misfortune. A great part of them started forth with wife and child, laden with their entire household equipment. So, your 2 questions following that. According to Eckhard, why did so many people from France go on to the Crusades? Why did so many Franks go on to the Crusades? Okay? And The second question: what did many of the crusaders take with them? All right. So not only why did so many people go, but what did they take with them? Okay. Going on to number 4, primary source number 4. Don't worry, there's only 4 more to go. Primary source number 4. Excerpt from the Alexiad by Princess Anna Komnene. She was a scientist and historian and the daughter of the Byzantine Emperor Alexios I. Her account of the First Crusade was written 40 years after the event. On the popular level, a certain Peter the Hermit, an unkempt, barefoot old man who lived on fish and wine and was a moving orator, proved the most effective preacher of the crusade. Through France and Germany, he recruited an undisciplined mob of ignorant peasants, including women and children, many of them serfs living wretched lives, suffering near starvation as a result of crop failure. Often they believed that Peter was leading them straight to heaven, the New Jerusalem, flowing with milk and honey, which they confused with the Jerusalem on earth. They poured up the Rhine, crossing into Hungary, where 4,000 Christian Hungarians were killed in a riot over the sale of a pair of shoes. The Rhine is a river. I just want to point that out. All right. The Byzantines, who had hoped for the loan of a few hundred well-trained knights, were appalled at the prospect of the enormous armies of human locusts about to descend on them from the west. They proceeded to arrange military escorts and to take all the precautions against trouble. Despite the best efforts, the undisciplined crusaders burned houses and stole everything that was not chained down. So, according to Anna Komnene, how well were the crusaders trained to fight? In there, it tells you what kind of crusaders came, and it kind of explains what was going on. All right, so how well were they trained to fight? And how did the crusaders behave while they were in the Byzantine Empire? That's also laid out there pretty well, too. All right, going on to primary source number 5. Excerpt from a papal decree by Pope Eugenius III in 1146. This decree started the Second Crusade. So now we're going on to the Second Crusade. Remember, there were 4, if you remember that from your reading, or when you read. All right. Moreover, in virtue of the authority vested by God in use, we, who with the paternal care provide for your safety, and have promised and granted to those who full remission of sins which our predecessor, Pope Urban, granted. We have also commanded that their wives, children, their property, and possessions shall be under the protection of the Holy Church. No lawsuit shall be instituted hereafter in regard to any property of which they were in peaceful possession when they took the cross. Those who are in debt shall pay no interest, and if they or others for them are bound by oath or promise to pay interest, we free them by our apostolic authority of the Church. Okay? So, besides the remission of sin, what other incentives did Pope Eugenius offer to crusaders? It tells you in there, it lays out what he's going to do if you fight for him. And number 2, what do these extra incentives suggest about the power of the church in medieval society? He's saying he can do some pretty big things there at the end. So what does this tell you about the power of the church during that time? Okay, going on to primary source number 6. All right. Excerpt from the writing of Nicetas Choniates. He was a minor official in the Byzantine imperial government and an eyewitness to the sacking of the Hagia Sophia, the great Christian cathedral in Constantinople, by crusaders in 1204 AD during the Fourth Crusade. If you have not, I would look up pictures of the Hagia Sophia because it's pretty cool. All right. So, this source. How shall I begin to tell of the deeds done by these wicked men? They broke into bits the sacred altar of the Hagia Sophia and distributed it among the soldiers. When the sacred vessels of the church, the silver and gold ornaments, were to be carried off, they brought mules and saddled horses into the church itself and right up to the sanctuary. A harlot sat in the patriarch's seat, singing an obscene song and dancing lewdly. They drew their daggers against anyone who opposed them at all. In the alleys and streets, in the church itself, one could hear the weeping and lamentations, the groans of men and shrieks of women, wounded, raped, and held captive. All right, so this one, first question on this one. What did Nicetas think of the Crusaders? He gives a pretty good description of what he thinks. All right, and do you think Nicetas believed the Crusaders were truly on a divine mission from God? And why? All right, so using what he wrote, do you think they were on a divine mission from God, and why? All right, after you finish all those, there's some conclusion questions at the end that you'll need to finish. So what conclusions can you draw from these excerpts? So using all of these that we just read through, you're going to answer these 6 questions, okay? Right, yeah, sorry, 6 questions. What conclusions can you draw from these excerpts? Based on the sources above, number 1, what kind of people were the Crusaders? All right, it gives you examples of what they were like. And so, okay, what kind of people were the Crusaders? And then state 3 adjectives to describe them. Okay, you can pull those adjectives straight from the reading if you would like, because it's using a primary source. Number 2, what was the economic status of many Crusaders before the Crusaders began? All right, what kind of economical state were they in, or economical status? And give me an example. Again, using your primary sources straight from that, pull it and use it. Number 3, why did they join the crusade? That gives you several examples on why people would have joined and what could have been rewarded to them, or why they were wanting to do it. And again, it asks you to cite an example on there. Okay. Number 4, how did they treat other Christians? That's a very important question because not everybody was treated the same. So go back through there and see how they treated other Christians and give me an example of that as well. Number 5, based on your examples cited, do you think that most Crusaders were well-trained chivalric knights? So chivalric knights, did they follow the code of chivalry that we talked about 2 weeks ago in class? And what do examples say about the religious mission behind the Crusades? Okay, and you can use an example to show that. All right, and what kind of people were the Crusaders? Okay, so it's asking you really to kind of dig into those primary sources and use examples to show what you've seen. Okay, so that's what you're going to do today. So you're going to read lesson 2, which is kind of short. I think it's only 4 pages if I remember correctly. Once you do that, then you're going to go through and do your lesson 2 quiz to go along with that. And then you're going to complete your Get to Know the Crusaders document-based questions that I just read through with you. Okay? I'm going to attach, a filled-in copy of your coronavirus COVID-19 worksheet so that you have the correct information, so you can also use that to go over, okay? So I've given you the answers for one of your assignments, all right? I just want to make sure that y'all had it done first. So, again, now that means that if I'm looking at everything for what I'm turning in on Monday as a 9th grade student, okay? So let's start back. Last week, you have your 3 worksheets that you'll need to fill out, okay? You'll have your COVID-19 worksheet that I'm about to give you the answers to in the email. You'll have your Black Plague worksheet that I gave you, and you'll have your disease research questions, okay? Those will be due. They were due yesterday. They will be due on Monday. We'll turn those in. Second, yesterday I had you do your open book test for Chapter 10 to round that out since we didn't get a chance to close it off in class, and to read Lesson 1 in Chapter 12 and to do your lesson quiz, all right? Today, you're going to read Lesson 2, and then you're going to do the Lesson 2 quiz along with that, and you get to know your Crusaders quiz, okay? So all of that's pretty straightforward, pretty laid out. And then along with that, make sure you're completing your presentation and the rubric that I attached yesterday in the email, you also had in the packet, okay? So I'll have a checklist in the email too with everything, but y'all go ahead and get started and let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. See ya.